The one place almost every thief ignored in the 1930s was inside the walls themselves, hidden behind baseboards and simple trim that blended perfectly into ordinary homes. During the Great Depression, theft was not a fringe activity. It was common, desperate, and often committed by people who knew exactly what they were looking for. Jewelry, cash, bonds, gold coins, ration goods, and anything easily traded disappeared fast when a house was hit. Yet despite how thorough many thieves were, one hiding place consistently went untouched. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't clever by modern standards, and it didn't look like a hiding place at all. That is precisely why it worked. Families who understood how thieves thought used the structure of the house itself, not furniture or containers, to protect what little they had left. Most homes built before and during the 1930s used plaster and lath construction. Behind the finished plaster walls was an empty cavity framed by wooden studs. Thieves knew walls existed, but breaking into them took time, tools, and noise. Depression-era theft relied on speed. A burglar expected to be inside a house for minutes, not hours. Anything that required prying, cutting, or leaving visible damage was avoided. A wall that looked intact meant nothing worth risking discovery. Families took advantage of that mindset. Now, baseboards back in the 1930s, they weren't just decorative luxuries, no sir. They were these simple, thick wooden strips nailed right into the studs to protect those walls from scuffs. A lot of them were loose-fitting or just attached with a handful of finish nails. Folks quietly figured out that by removing just a short section of baseboard, they could get direct access to the wall cavity without so much as damaging the plaster. Once you put it back, it looked untouched, like nothing ever happened. Thieves, well, they checked drawers, mattresses, trunks, and floorboards, but they rarely crouched down to test the trim along the wall, especially when everything looked undisturbed. Now, this wasn't about hiding silverware or those bulky valuables. Nope. Families would wrap cash in oilcloth wax paper or even tin tobacco boxes to keep them safe from moisture. Gold coins, well, they were sewn into cloth packets and wedged right between the studs. Important documents, they'd be rolled up tight and placed inside glass jars sealed with pitch or candle wax. Some folks even hid small food reserves like sugar or ration coupons when times got real tough. All these things sat just inches away from plain sight, yet they stayed invisible to anyone not willing to take apart a wall. You know, even today, modern survival advice still suggests hiding items in furniture, under floorboards, or inside containers that look like everyday objects. But back in the 1930s, thieves expected just that. Mattresses got slashed, couch cushions were ripped open, and false bottom drawers, well, they were common knowledge. Even flour tins and coal buckets got routinely checked. The more clever a hiding place looked, the more likely it was to be searched. Walls, on the other hand, they were just plain boring. They didn't offer any visual clue that something valuable might be tucked away in there. There weren't any survival guides, no forums, and not a single how-to book to turn to. Knowledge just, well, spread quietly, neighbor to neighbor, through relatives, and passed down by tradesmen. Carpenters, painters, and repairmen, they all knew just how simple it was to remove and replace a bit of trim. Word got around, that valuables hidden where the house itself keeps them managed to survive burglaries that stripped everything else bare. Families, they kept track of which homes got hit and what the thieves missed. After a while, the patterns started to become real clear. The lesson here ain't to just start tearing open modern drywall at random. Not at all. The real principle is understanding how criminals work. They go for speed, silence, and what they already know. These days, the smart move is structural concealment that doesn't go advertising itself as storage. Modern homes, they still got voids, access panels, and those non-obvious cavities that just blend right into the structure. That old Depression-era mindset, it teaches a bit of restraint. Fewer hiding spots chosen wisely beat out dozens of clever containers every time. Now, if you're a homeowner worried about keeping documents or small valuables safe, you might consider creating a concealed access point. You could tuck it behind some removable trim or maybe within an existing maintenance panel. The key here is invisibility, not complexity, folks. Back in the days of the Depression, families didn't bother with elaborate mechanisms. They banked on the idea that no thief would waste time tearing down intact walls when there were easier targets out there. And you know, that logic is still pretty darn sound today. Survival, well, it's not about paranoia or putting on a show. It's about getting a grip on behavior under stress. Now, back in the 1930s, thieves, they were desperate, but they were still rational. They steered clear of anything that slowed them down or upped their risk. That very same behavioral pattern, it holds true during modern crises. Hiding within the structure itself, rather than using clever containers, is still one of the most overlooked principles in personal security. Economic pressure, it really strips people down to efficiency. The Great Depression, it showed us just how quickly social norms can bend and how predictable folks' behavior becomes when they're under stress. Families who made it through, they learned to protect what mattered quietly without making a show of their smarts or preparations. And you know what? That wisdom, it's outlived the era itself. If this kind of grounded, no-nonsense history strikes a chord with you, why not subscribe to Battlefield of Survival? Share this guide with someone who values real lessons from the past, and let's keep these stories alive. The past, well, it's still got a heap to teach us if we're willing to pay attention.